Welcome to Books of Our Time, a show produced by the Massachusetts School of Law and seen nationwide. Today's book that we are discussing is Crossing the Line, the outrageous story of a hockey original. With me today is its author, Derek Sanderson, formerly of the Boston Bruins. Derek, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. Long time ago.
Why did you write this book now?
Well, I had an ending. I didn't have an ending before. I think you need an ending. I mean, I thought about it, but early sobriety isn't it. I mean, a lot of people reach early sobriety, and there's so many different steps through the process. Now it's been 30-some years I haven't drank, but it's a kind of, where does your life end up? And when I realized, I was kept on waiting for maturity to hit me, and it never hit me. And I think when I'm 21. But I think what happened is I met my wife, sober, and then she had rules, and then she wanted a family. I didn't want to get married, I didn't want a family. I'm good, I'm selfish, I'm good. At least I knew that. And then she kind of took over and said, no, we're going to do this, okay. And then she gave me 2 wonderful kids, and both boys in college, and rules and bills, and that's fine. I think all men need that eventually.
I love the story you told in the book about protecting your teacher, Miss Escott.
Yes.
Why do you feel so strongly about bullies?
I never liked bullies. I just was not. My dad was really anti-bully. Never, he was on one of those, always be nice to people on the way up, and you meet them on the way down, right? And I hated the mimicking and the joking and the deceit of it. I don't know why. I was taught, I was taught by my dad to be loyal, my mother to respect women, and it's just, I hated it. And it was a gutless. It's a terrible thing to do. And that's why I got in a few fights with it, but then I couldn't tell the truth. So I don't know how I was going to get out of that. Because I didn't want to embarrass her, because I don't think she knew. She had terrible arthritis, but great teacher.
Speaking of your dad, you mention him a lot in the book, in the beginning, the end, and in between.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously had a very profound impact on your life.
Yeah.
What lessons of his do you carry with you today?
Well, his lessons, first of all, you got to realize in the book, and it's true, and they've proven it, that it's a family disease. It is. You can inherit it. So they proved that in, I think, 96, the DNA response. So my dad was an alcoholic, and he didn't know it. I didn't know it. But he had rules, and he had things to live by, and loyalty was one of them, and respect for others. And so he was never ever forced me to play hockey. He conditioned me to pain early. It's only a state of mind. It doesn't last forever, and you can't remember it. So why be afraid of it? And that helped hockey. That certainly helps in hockey. And he was always right, and he's a pretty smart man, and he self-taught. Went into the war early in 1939. It was in France, and so in Poland, and he came back and had quit school, and he self-taught, and I was really kind of amazed at that. A great machinist. He knew everything about tools. About machines. I know nothing. So that isn't inherited.
How was your sister's relationship with him?
My sister's was somewhat of a male girl thing. Was that that era? And my sister and my mom are very close. She's a straight A student, and very supportive, very good. But she was not a hockey player, and not an athlete. And my dad only wanted me to be a hockey player because he read in a book, magazine called Maclean's. They asked Canada. Took a poll in the entire country, and they asked what was the most respected profession in 1954, I think. And doctors were second. Hockey players were first. So I was always going to be a hockey player, I guess.
Did she ever resent you for the times when he would say, Karen, go cut the grass?
Yes, I think she did. But we've had fun with it since, and I've talked about it since. And she's kind of proud of my career and et cetera, so forth. But she never was like a hockey fan. She's just kind of proud of her brother, that's all.
Did your dad know the extent of your wild days? No.
No. I made the mistake of telling him something one day. We're out fishing. I may be 27. So I tell him a couple of stories. He goes, oh yeah? Next day, my mother grabbed me by the ear. She said, "Don't ever talk to your father." Yeah. Well, so I didn't really talk to him about what happened, and he left it alone. And he didn't talk about the war. Well, we always found something to talk about.
What did your coaches do to you when they perceived you to be showing off in hockey?
Well, I had the one experience, which is a humbling experience, and it was only the once. I had just I had 3 goals in Hamilton, and they were on television for the first time ever, and I was only 17. So I was kind of fancy at practice the next day, and the coach called everybody down. "Come here, you guys got to be really fortunate to be playing with somebody as good as, you know, it's amazing how I've watched them just mature so fast. Great play." I'm going, "Who is it?" Because we had a really good team. And he said, "You guys got to be thrilled to be playing with Derek." And I said, "Oh, God, what's he now?" He said, "And I imagine you're so good, you probably don't need your wingers." Now, that was Bill Goldsworthy and John Pronovo, who both scored 50 goals in the National Hockey League. And they were only 17, 18. Because you guys can sit down. And you probably don't need your defense either. There's Jill Marat and Ricky Lee. They both played the National Hockey League. You guys should sit down. I'll give you a goalie. And that was Bernie Perron, and he played the National Hockey League too. And he said, "Now you're good enough to play yourself. You don't need anybody, do you?" And I said, "Oh, geez, no." And we had a scrimmage, dropped the puck, and he says, "If you're standing up for any more than 15 seconds, you're all going to do 100 laps." And they hit me and hit me and hit me, and I couldn't go anywhere. And I went to the bench. He goes, "No, you're good enough to play another shift. You probably don't need the next second line." And I went back out, got pounded again, and I said, "All right, you win. That's it." He says, "Now you understand? It's a game. It's a team game. You pass the puck to people, and you defend your own line mates. And it's a positional game." So they teach you that in junior. And then he tied a string holding the puck and told me to wear it to school for a week. And he says, "I'll know if you take it off too." So walking down the hall with a puck around your neck, everybody laughing at me, but I never did that again.
Why was your first contract so bad?
Well, I had signed. I didn't know it was bad. I didn't know it was good. I knew I was making a little bit more than my dad after 3 years, but I didn't know it was good. And I was signed illegally, as a matter of fact. I was signed, still had a year of junior, and I signed that contract while Hap Bems was the general manager of the Bruins, which is totally wrong. And I don't know, it's illegal. Anyway, I signed it quickly, and that was the people pleaser in me. Okay, sign it, good. So I get to go home and tell my dad. He says, "So you happy with it? Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah." And then it came out that I won Rookie of the Year, and I wanted more. And he said, "Is that your word?" I said, "Yeah." "Your dad teach you your word, your bond?" I said, "Yeah." "That's your signature?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I made a good deal. You made a bad one. Come and get me in 3 years." And that was the owner of the Bruins, who was always good to me. So I did. And I never signed a multi-year contract again.
All right, I like Cam Neely all time for Bruins, and today I kind of like Brad Marchand. He's highly skilled, and he's not afraid to play physical. He starts a lot of stuff, but he will back it up as well.
My favorite hockey player is Tuukka Rask. He's the goaltender for the Boston Bruins.
When you're ready to make a difference in the world, one law school can make a difference for you. The Massachusetts School of Law is where you learn to become a lawyer. As the most affordable law school in New England, you'll graduate with the most professional skills and the least amount of debt. Our small classes ensure a rich learning experience and a campus environment so special, our students don't want to leave. The Massachusetts School of Law. We're ready to make a difference for you. Visit us today at mslaw.edu.
My favorite hockey player would have to be Cam Neely. I grew up with my dad being a huge hockey fan, and we were always watching the Bruins. I remember falling asleep at night to the sound of skates, and definitely Cam Neely had a big impression on hockey for me.
Bobby Orr changed the game of hockey more than any other player, including Wayne Gretzky. He changed the nature of how defensemen play the game. He made it a very offensive game, and he played with dignity and grace. I grew up watching the big bad Bruins in the 1970s. And all those players were my favorites. Besides Bobby Orr, Derek Sanderson, Johnny Pye McKenzie, Jerry Cheevers, Kenny Hodge, Cashman, all those guys were terrific. I think on today's team, the Bruins have a real bunch of wonderful players. Bergeron is one of the most skilled and versatile players in the league. He's certainly one of my favorites.
When you were a rookie, Phil Esposito said to you, "Kid, if you don't drink, don't start." Now, these words obviously made an impression on you because you remember them to this day.
Yeah.
Did you consider them at all? Or
Oh, yeah. I had the choice. When Cheevers said to me, and he's a good guy, Jerry, he said, "Kid, you want a beer?" My first training camp. And you want to belong, you want to be liked. And I said, "I don't drink." And he said, "Oh, then you're finished. You'll never make it." And he was kind of only joking. I didn't know that because I wasn't very worldly at the time. And Esposito says, "Hey, kid, if you don't drink, don't start." So I had a choice. And I chose to drink. I chose to learn how to drink. And I didn't know it was going to be as devastating as it was till I ended up at the counselor after 13 detoxes. He told me why it was such a big deal. And the book's got all that in it. And it is something that it was a bad choice. One of many that started down that. And see, our life is a series of choices. 5th grade, 3rd grade. Like people say, sticks and stones will break my bones and names will never hurt me. Names are what carve us. The names, the bullying, that's why we go this way or that way. Avert, change, don't go, don't get involved, don't go there, don't go alone, have this friend. We do that because we get insulted by people who don't like us or we don't like them. Or why do we try to please people that don't like us? That always amazed me. And I did it all my life. And all my friends and my family that I had were solid and backed me up. I took them for granted. And then I always went out trying to impress other people. It's stupid. But you start making silly decisions and you'll pay the price.
So then do you think it was more the hockey culture than the fear of flying? Because you said that also contributed to your...
Yeah, I learned how to drink a lot fast because of my fear of flying. And it was on there was a big accident. We had there was an explosion in a DC-9, one of the engines, and we started bailing out, and the plane was whining, and it was going down. I saw lights in California. We were going from Oakland Seals to Los Angeles Kings, and saw the mountains in California, and then a guy, teammate across the hall, whoa, didn't spill a drop, and the plane went down. And I said, "How many miles? You're going to fly 110,000 miles a year, 10 years, 15 years, it's $1.5 million. Something's got to happen." So it was the odds that I didn't like. So that was the justification and the rationalization to drink more. I didn't realize I was doing that at that point. So I used to get 4 or 5 fingers, 6, boom, throw it back, and hold my breath, and chew a piece of Dentyne, smoke a cigarette, and drink some 7-Up, and pour myself on a plane and get out. It was 5, 6 shots to go to Chicago, 10 to go to LA, just a couple to go to New York. But it was the way I always flew. And then it got worse. You just really build a tolerance to it that way. And I owned 4 nightclubs. That didn't help. So you start sipping at noon, 1 o'clock after practice. You have lunch. Becomes a way of life very quickly.
Why is keep your head up the greatest myth in hockey?
Well, a lot of people always say keep your head up. But if you keep your head up, no one's going to come and check you. No one's going to go near you because you're going to dish it, pass it, and deal it out. But if you keep your head down and your eyes up and they don't see you, and then you only have to look at socks. And no one's going to hit you without their socks on, right? So that way you can fool. So they make a charge at you, and then you can slip or slide either way. But then you never do look at the puck. And the problem with today, kids got cages on, and they have to stick their head down. So that's how they learn to handle a puck. Their head straight down. And watch how the players get hit today. They get hit from 40 feet away, have no concept. Their heads are down. And you cannot have your heads down without your eyes being up because your danger is in front of you. It isn't when you're looking at the puck. It's that they want it too. See, hockey is a game of take it away. and keep away, you know. In baseball, they give you the ball. In football, they give you the ball. In basketball, they give you the ball. In hockey, you have to take it away. It's nobody's ball. No set plays. So it's a matter of drift and tide and cover and slide. And it's kind of a sixth sense of playing on what you have to do. You can't direct players. You can't give players something to think. The game happens far too fast to think. So you have to anticipate. You have to move and judge and second guess. Say, okay, I can't get there. I got to turn. If you think about doing something, it's too late. You just have to feel it. It's a flow. Some have it, some don't. Some guys are very good at playing a position, and they won't be very exciting. They'll do their job. They'll get 12, 13 goals. But they won't ever be that player that's going to break a game wide open.
You had such a fear of public speaking that you dropped out of high school to avoid having to give a speech in a class. How is it that
That's
you
true.
ultimately became a television broadcaster? Did you learn to
You read
overcome
this
your
book,
fear?
did you? Yeah, I was. I did. I didn't really like my French teacher. She didn't like how I liked the hockey. And if any of the teachers gave me breaks, I really worked hard at their subject. It was history or whatever. My French teacher was a little bit, didn't like it. And she always kind of chose me to do things and speak in French. And I get it. You got to learn the accent. You have to learn it. And eventually, the French players that I played with, like Marat and Pronoville and Perron, they all taught me how to speak French. That I was with them for 4 years. So I actually learned French. And French people will really help you. English-speaking people won't. They kind of laugh at you because it's kind of not as friendly. I don't know why. But French people, when you try to speak their language, they really go bend over backwards for you, at least in Quebec. France, a little bit different. But she said to me, you're going to pick me to do a speech in front of the whole school, in the auditorium, all my buddies and all the girls I liked and had crushes on. I'm going to make a fool of myself. And I had 13 days, 12 or 13 days from after that announcement to talk my dad into quitting. And he finally let me. And then I quit. And then I always regretted that. School's too important. If you don't have letters behind your name, if you don't have some kind of social skills that you learn in college, you're not going to be very well prepared for this world. And then you'll be doing a lot of thinking on your feet, because I'll tell you, it's a struggle without an education.
Did you eventually overcome your fear because you became a broadcaster for many years?
No.
You still
No.
Still
If you ask me to look in the camera and talk to it, then I can't. I could talk to you, fine. I just ignore the camera. And I ignored. I had Fred Cusick. He was the best. I worked with him for 10 years, and he's passed now, but I tell you, he was the best. Total professional. Did it for 52 years. And I remember my first game was October 26th against St. Louis, and he said, listen, you don't have to jump in on everything. Just let it flow. And I'll pause. If you don't have anything to say, I'll keep going. And he was good at that. And St. Louis scored 3 goals in the first 4.5 minutes. And he says, wow, that's a tough start. I said, no, Fred, not to worry. St. Louis hasn't hit the net yet. They do not know they're up 3-0. And the Bruins don't feel like they're down 3-0. I said, a power play, a pretty goal, and a fluke, we're all even. And before the period was over, they did. And he said, wow, it's amazing. I said, no, that's just kind of the way 3 goals is the most tentative lead in sports. But he was the best. And I could, and when I went to talk to kids, I spoke with 700-800 schools, 700,000 kids. The first 2, I was talking at them, and it wasn't working. So I did the 3rd one over in Bunker Hill. It was a middle school, 8th graders, and I was behind the screen, and I got on my knees and said, God help me. And I did not know what to say. And I got out, and I thought the idea of getting rid of, it wasn't my idea. It's the first thing that popped in my head, and I got rid of all the authority. And then the kids opened up, and they were quiet, and this was cool. They're on their own. And they really were good, and the kids were great. And after that, I didn't say things that was going to be some kind of awakener. I just talked the way I was. So when I was scared and shy, and they related to it. And then we had Q&A, and some schools went for 2-3 hours. And it's amazing what kids will do if you just let them talk, let them ask you questions. And then I finally realized I had to park the motorhome and stay at school for the whole day. And then the kids would come in the motorhome and talk one-on-one. And then we could talk about their fears and their doubts and what they're afraid of. And they're afraid of bullies and same things I was.
Why was Teddy Green's comment to you your proudest moment in hockey?
Well, I think when you're young, and the Bruins bought me when I was 11, so that they knew I was going to be a hockey player. Well, if I was good enough. I got to go through the junior system and all that nonsense. But they brought me up at 18, and I hit twice as hard as I've ever been hit in my life. And that's 6-team league, and I said, my God, they're all good. So I went back to junior. And I humbly went back to junior. I didn't have a problem with that. And then I came up for training camp and back down. And then it's really a struggle to make. They are really good. I mean, they're very talented. And Teddy Green was exceptionally tough. And we had a go-round in the first day of camp, first scrimmage day of camp. And he didn't like it. He has a way about the way it's supposed to happen, right? So Greeny says, we didn't talk. And we kind of went at each other. And he ran me a couple times with head down, eyes up. Yeah, and he missed me. So, and he was mad. Now he was really mad. And I'm laughing at him. And he slashed me and we're sticking each other. Coaches loved it. I was horrified. If he ever wanted to drop him, he was a seriously tough guy. So I think about maybe the fourth exhibition game we played in Montreal. We had a knock him down, drag him out brawl, and because it was exhibition. And kind of the idea was we're going to be tougher than they were because they were very good, very fast. And we were a little bit of a plumber, plug-along hit type of team. So we didn't scare you. We couldn't beat you. So in this brawl, I had a couple of fights, and I was really tired. You're still not in shape. And I couldn't lift my arms anymore. And, Teddy Harris is you, center ice, point to center ice. Everybody in the building sees it, right? So he's calling my bluff. Ooh. And Teddy, tough guy. So he's 6'4", and I found center ice with him. And he said, out of nowhere, a guy grabs my shoulder, and it's Teddy. He said, you want him, you got me. And he said, no, I want anything to do with you, Teddy. He says, you do if you got him. And that was it. That's when you know you belong. And that is not done a lot. A lot of people don't have that defining moment of when you finally made the team. Your teammates know you made it before management does. So that's really kind of an essential part of what happens to you in the game.
Why didn't you heed John Havlicek's advice or admonition, shall we call it, to you to not hire his lawyer?
I thought I was with Kenny Harrelson. He was my buddy. And he brought me, and I figured, okay, fine. And I didn't figure maybe him and John had an argument. He didn't, and I made a foolish mistake. But that's because you're young and don't know what you're doing. And I made that mistake. It cost me a lot of money.
Do you know how much it cost you?
Yeah, probably in the millions.
Wow.
So I don't know what happened. At that point, I was drinking, so I don't want to lay blame where I can't prove it. And I don't know I didn't stay awake. You have to stay awake 24 hours a day to spend that much. And I knew I bought a townhouse, and he ended up owning it, not me. I don't know how that happened, but there's a lot of different things happen.
And why didn't you tell Joe Namath that you decided not to run his bar anymore?
I don't know. It was like Joey Savino was my friend, and Jimmy McDonough. And Joe was in New York, and we were having a great time in Bachelor Street in Boston. Even Bobby Van, Joe's partner, was there. And Joe would come in football weekends with Patriots, and they'd play. And he was unbelievably talented. And to watch a football game with Joe Namath is a treat. Because I tell you, he knows football like no one I've ever met since or before. And he would read a play, and I kind of understood audibles and why they would do that. And those are integral parts of the game that I never knew before. So I always respected him. But Joey said to me one day, "Why are we doing this for Joe? Why don't we do this for ourselves?" I said, "All right, what are we going to do?" And he said, "I got a place picked out." And it was a 3-bedroom apartment. I said, "What are you, nuts?" And it was too close to a school and too close to a church, and it was the Back Bay Society didn't want us there. And we ended up with a license anyway. It was the first liquor license, the first business, really, outside of 2 art studios on Newbury Street. Now you can't. Well, if I still owned that building, I'd be in good shape. But, you know.
Explain your connection to Jimmy Buffett's song, Boat Drinks.
You know, that always amazed me. He says it every time he comes to New England. And I called Jimmy and I went and saw him after. And I remember when he was young, and he wasn't Jimmy Buffett, the Jimmy Buffett. He was just kind of like starting out, and like I was. And I guess it was a blizzard, and I went to the game, and he got drunk and thought of this song. And he says that's where he got it, was sitting there drinking in Daisies when we went to play Montreal. So I went, "Hi, how are you?" He's a good guy. I mean, he's very talented, tremendous following. Wow. But I don't remember a lot of that.
Let's talk about when you're about to re-sign with the Bruins. You had your desired salary, you're in the office, pen in hand, and the Bruins attorney pops his head in the door and made a slightly negative comment.
Well, it was all over a basic. They wanted to pay me $75,000.
Right.
I wanted 80 from, I think, 25. After 2 Stanley Cups, I wanted 80. Because Harry Sinden had told me, he said he wanted me to go play defense. He wanted me to be a penalty killer. And my rookie year, I played a left point in the power play. That's where you get all the points. That's where you get all the money. And he said, "Well, we'll pay you. Don't worry about that." But then he wanted a little raise, fired him. So he came back as a managing director, and he was always fair. But I was holding on. I wanted the 80, and they have a budget. Weston Adams Sr. had a budget. I called for 75. That's all it was. And I was holding out because reason I held out is because I didn't like training camp. I didn't play exhibition games because there's always somebody tough on the other side. I don't have to fight this guy. He's never going to be here during the winter. He's going to go to the East Coast League. I don't need to do. No. So I would only play like maybe 1 exhibition game at the end of the season. But that was my reason for holding out. It wasn't the 5,000. And then Johnny McKenzie came to me and said, "Do you want to listen to Philadelphia? They want to make you an offer." I said, "Okay." So I went over with Joey Cimino, and we sat in the office, and they offered me $2,300,000. And I was actually stunned. I had like 7 beer in me, you know. I had a buzz going on. And I went, wow. I didn't know what to say. So I was stunned. And he took it as disinterest. I don't know why he did that. And he says, "I'm authorized to go as high as $2,600,000. I said, "Well, it isn't a question of money." And we went over the points, 2-bedroom suite on the road, a limo driver. It's crazy. And so they gave me a lot of different things to do and a lot of different clauses that I could. So it was amazing that they didn't really know what they were doing. But I owed a lot to Weston Adams Sr., the owner of the Bruins. And I said, "Sign that and give me 5 banking days." Don't even know what it meant. But it was a Thursday, and I knew I could go to the bank. Wasn't open on Saturday, Sunday. So I took it to Mr. Adams, and he said, I asked him, what would he do? And he said, "Well, as your friend, I got to tell you to take this. This is your family's security for life if you manage it properly. If you don't, you'll rue the day you took this money. It can destroy you if you don't manage it. You haven't been raised to money. You don't understand it." And I thought that was kind of pretty worldly, but it confused me. I didn't know what he meant by it. I found out later. But he says, I'm getting a sense that you're not really thrilled about this. And I said, "No." I said, "All my friends are here. I'm happy here." He goes, "I might understand you would stay with us." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I respect your loyalty." I said, "You were good to me when I was 15. He goes, "Well, I respect your loyalty," he said. "Under the circumstances, we'll give you the 80. So I got my 80. So I said, "One condition." He said, "Would you sign with my son?" I said, "Okay." and because he was ill. He was very ill. And Weston Adams Jr., great guy, he was the president of the team. And I said to Weston Adams Sr., his dad, as long as the Bruins lawyer wasn't there, because he always did the deals before, and he was tough. He was shrewd, you know, and he beat me every time, so I didn't want to deal with him anymore. So he said, I promise you he won't be in the building. And I said, okay. And I went there, went right from his house to the garden with Weston Adams Jr. And I said to him, I said, if people find out I turned this money down, they're going to put me in Bridgewater. You know that. They'll put me right in Bridgewater. And which is, for the audience, just a local insane asylum. And he said, guaranteed, not a problem. I said, I really respect your loyalty. Same thing as Dad said. So what is this? I said, okay. And I got the pen. It was all just team bonuses, a standard player's contract, $80,000. And I started the D, and the lawyer stuck his head in the door and said, I still think you're only worth $75. And I threw the pen out and went to Philadelphia. Shouldn't have done that. Should have stayed where I was. I was happy with the 80, so I wouldn't have had to experience the $2.5 million and the insanity that came with it. And when you're alone in a city that you don't know anybody, that happens to a lot of players. People don't understand that. You may give him $8 million and he goes to a town, get traded to a town. You don't know anybody. That's why players end up with these entourages. And those are the pack of people they know. And the hangers-on and stuff like that. I mean, we're all kind of small town. We never really grew up. We're on the streets. We did what we did, and we loved it, and it was emotional, and then they gave you all that money. And a good many people don't understand it. In Canada, they did a study on lottery, the lottos, and the people that won big, like 20, 30 million. And I mean, there's 52 divorces, 11 suicides, 2 murders. It's like crazy. It totally disrupts your life. You live at a certain pace. The next thing you know, I bought a Rolls Royce. My God, did I buy a Rolls Royce? The day I find out that the money was real. So the stupidity of it can eat you up.
Was it pride? Was it what perception? The perception that they broke their word? I'm just trying to understand, like, that comment, him poking his head in the door, which clearly the owners didn't condone.
No. It was. That's a good question, because I kind of had second thoughts about the money driving back, but I gave my word, so I said I was going to do it, and I couldn't get out of it because I gave my word to him.
Okay.
And that was my dad's thing about my bond. I said, okay.
So it was an easy excuse.
And as soon as he gave me an excuse, perfect. And I should have said perfect and laughed, but I said, meh, but instead, and that was it.
Explain your role in Philadelphia World Hockey Club versus Philadelphia Hockey Club, the famous case that eliminated the reserve clause in hockey.
Well, I didn't know anything about that at the time. They wanted me to, I had a friend of mine that was a very powerful guy, and he said, well, the league doesn't even exist. And I asked him about the money and all that, and he said, well, I said, this judge stopped it in Bobby Hall in Philadelphia. There's no reserve clause, so there has to be compensation. So they asked me to take it on, and then my friend's advice was to move it to Suffolk County, where the Bruins were. And they moved it there, and then the Boston judge saw it differently. And then free agency was born. And everybody had to be re-signed, which it amazed me they did. Nobody was smart enough to pick up on it. And I didn't know. So I couldn't tell anybody. And it was an amazing thing. And it's changed sports completely. And, the town, we live well in the city. You live well in the town you're in. They pay you pretty good. And your friends are here, and your life is here. And usually where you meet the rest of your life is in your career in a certain city. It doesn't happen much anymore. Players bounce around, they move on, sign for 3 years, move somewhere else for 1, get 12 here, get 14 now. So it kind of, in my day, everybody knew everybody on the team. I mean, you could drive down the street and people would roll the window down, which tells you how bad it was to roll the window down. And they'd say, hey, you're not playing very well. And because they recognized everything you did. You got free everywhere you went. Fans took care of you. Fans on restaurants and bars. You didn't pay for anything. we weren't really in need of anything. And you lose that when you take all the money and go to an empty town. You don't know the city. They don't know you. And the press is wary. They don't know whether to follow you or not or get on you. So, kind of strange.
Was there any fallout from your statement comparing Philadelphia to Vietnam?
No, there was a little bit. That was kind of a slip of the tongue, so to speak. And I tell you what, Vietnam is, when you look at it, and the soldiers in those days, they had people dissed them, and I tell you what, they were draftees, and they went to Vietnam, and they fought for this country, and they come back, and they weren't respected. And then you see today, they're gung-ho. Well, they did the same thing in Vietnam, and they were drafted, and they still fought. That you got to admire, too. So I should never have said anything like that.
Were you the first one to introduce hockey's playoff tradition of the no-shave rule?
No. Mention that, no. I don't know where that came from. I think it's stupid. Some guys can't grow them. And some of them, if you go right to the end of the finals, you got this Grizzly Adams beard going on. And no one knows how to shave them properly or cut them. So I think it's dumb. You don't recognize the guy. You don't see him with a helmet on anyway. Thank God they got the names on the back.
Why do you say you really learn the game by broadcasting it?
Because you watch all of it. When you're playing it, you're trying to read it and figure out where you can steal a puck, grab it, okay, play defense, go pick up your winger and go back. But when you're watching every shift, and you can watch when players try and players don't try. And when people sit up high, they watch and they know. When you see a player check up when they go in the corner, that player does not want to be there. So you know that player doesn't want to be physical. And it's a very physical game, and it's a violent game, and it's played by violent people. And courage takes a big part of that game to play. You got to have that, or you're not going to play very long. But I didn't say anyone's a coward, because you can't play that game and be afraid. You just don't want to get hit. And so, I always thought that was a stupid statement too. Coaches say, "Oh, come on, you got to hit them. They don't want to be hit." And I always looked at it, do you want to be hit? And the guy said, "No, I don't like it either." So that was another dumb one. But
Do you miss broadcasting?
yeah, I had a great time doing it. I loved it. I loved working with Fred Cusick, and I love working with Kenny London. He's the director-producer. I went in there, and we kind of were at odds at first, because I had my pride in the game, and he had his pride in the production. And I said, "Okay, you teach me good television, and then I'll teach you good hockey." And he took that to the wall. He was really good. He taught me a lot, Kenny London. And I never saw anyone exhausted at the end of the game. None of the players were as exhausted as he was. Put a lot of his heart and soul into that broadcast. And I found that hard. I mean, that was, geez, he really works at this. And so you can't fault anybody that works that hard at it. And Kenny was really good.
And what are you doing now?
I'm in the investment business. I started a sports group 27 years ago to manage players' money. At first, the original mission statement was to protect, number one, players from themselves and the money. And number two, take them out of the hands of people that would use them and abuse them, and protect them from losing it like I did. And that was an ideal that I started with John Goldsmith. And he was the chairman of a firm. It was a small firm, and Tucker Anthony, and on we went with it. And then I retired kind of for a while, and then college will force you out of that, college payments. So Tom O'Connor is the president here at Baystate Wealth, and he and I are friends. And he said, "I'd like to bring the sports group here and start it here and get it going." So Eric Goodman and myself and Tom are doing so. We've only been here a short period of time, but we're working on it.
Was what happened to you motivation for getting into this field?
It is a rude, ugly day when your career is finished, your health is gone, and you have no money, and you have no future, and you have no education. And I go, wow. And that was in 1978. I hit the ropes for a long time, 3 years. I'm lucky I'm alive, and I got out of it. Through this guy that helped me more than anybody else, and Bobby staying beside me. And the next thing you know, I got sober and That's what I wanted to do. He sent me back to school, John Goldsmith. So he said, go back to school and understand the industry. Not that I ever would own a stock or buy a stock. That isn't what I do. I just try to formulate a group of people with athletes' concern in their heart and in their daily work.
My favorite player is Milan Lucic. Plays forward for the Boston Bruins, and the reason I think he's one of the best players and why he's my favorite player is because he plays hard and physical, and there aren't many hockey players that use their bodies to punish opposing defenders the way that Lucic does, the way that Neely used to when I was a kid. My favorite overall hockey player of all time is John LeClair, only because when I was a kid, he was absolutely dominant in Blades of Steel, which was the quintessential hockey 8-bit Nintendo game between the years of 1987 and 1992, my formative years as a Nintendo player.
I'll have to go with Wayne Gretzky because he changed the game when he played. He pretty much made it all offense and broke all the scoring records and had most of the high-scoring games with the Oilers, which made the game very exciting, even though the game wasn't as popular as it is now. Gretzky always drew a crowd.
My favorite hockey player is Zdeno Chara. After this last season, it's clear that he is the true captain of the Bruins team. Bobby Orr, best hockey player of all time.
My favorite hockey player is Randy Burridge, played for the Bruins years ago, and Jay Miller is also one of my favorites. Jay Miller was one of my favorites because he was a great fighter, the excitement of hockey. Randy Burridge, number 12, Stumper, just a great hockey player. He was a wing, short, and very quick, and I just respected the way that he played the game.
For 25 years, the Massachusetts School of Law has been training great lawyers and building great relationships.
Joining MSL was more than just making friends. It was becoming a part of a family, which makes it very difficult to leave.
I don't want to leave MSL.
We didn't want to leave MSL ever! Best decision ever! We love MSL! We don't want to leave!
The Massachusetts School of Law. Great lawyers, better people. Come join our family. Visit us today at mslaw.edu.
Patrick O'Rourke was a Goldie. To me, he's the best player. He won 3 Stanley Cups, one with Montreal. Montreal didn't appreciate him, so he left them. And then went to the Avalanche, while they appreciated him more. And he won 2 Stanley Cups. And his other player that played with him was Kurt Muller. He was a center. And he won a Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens. And he was good, too.
My favorite hockey player is actually 3 from the Buffalo Sabres, where I'm a native New Yorker. Rennie Robert, Gilles Perreault, and Rick Martin. The reason they're my favorite is they were the top of the line, they were charismatic, they were exciting on the ice, and we still love them to this day. And they were winners. They always won. Between the 3 of them, they have 19 all-star games. What more can you ask for in a hockey player?
Let's talk about hockey for a few minutes. Why do you think Bobby Orr was the greatest player ever?
Well, I've had that analyzed a lot of different times. And you know, you look at Wayne Gretzky, got 92 goals and 200 points. He also did it in a very watered-down league with goaltenders, about 3 or 4 of them were good. And Bobby played in the 16 league where everybody was good. And then he learned how to be a leader without talking about it, without screaming at anybody, more by example than anything else. But he really did make us all better. Now, they say Mario Lemieux did it, Wayne Gretzky did it, and all their teammates love them. One guy asked me one time, if you had to start a franchise, what would you do? Have 20 Bobby Orrs, 20 Gretzkys, or 20 Lemieux? And I'll win more cups with 20 Orrs. And if you get 20 Bobby Orrs, that heart and courage and play with pain, and he played in odd man situations, never was a... I can't remember anyone ever taking the puck off of him, and I don't think he was ever healthy. I always had a bad knee. He played with broken fingers, but he always played. Tremendous amount of courage and an ability to handle pain, and that I admired and respected in him. I don't know what the other ones do. I don't know them. I don't know they were good, but I don't know.
You played through a lot of pain yourself, returning to the game with many injuries. Knowing what we know today about concussions and the dangers, the long-term effects of them, would you have played the same way if you knew this? If you knew this then?
Yeah. I wouldn't have played the same way because I never wore a helmet. And no one has ever figured that out. I listen to Versus Television, and I'm listening to the mediator and the commentator and 6 hockey players. And I'm sitting there listening to them on Versus, and they're all trying to figure out helmets. Why the concussions? And it hit me. Because you don't know how to play. You've only learned to play with helmets on. And your mother told you when you were 5 you were protected. And you are not protected. And then the cage came in after that original season of mandating helmets, and a kid can't see. You lose your peripheral vision, you can't pick up people in movement and sense of movement, and then you get hit. And when I talked to other players, Stan Mikita said it too, that Rydell football helmet said, it really can't be done. The game is played at too fast a speed to negate centripetal force, which is your brain floats in fluid.
Mm-hmm.
When the head stops fast, the brain keeps going. And it hits the skull and bounces back, and that's what causes the concussion. So helmets can't prevent that. As a matter of fact, helmets prematurely hit glass, ice, and posts, and they prematurely, and most of the concussions are not head-to-head. Most of them are like stem injuries and stopping quickly and stopping the body, and you snap your head. And those are really a shock to your brain. And what we did is we hit shoulders, hit down, and body hits, and kept the sticks down. We were told keep it down the ice. You can't score up here, you got to keep it there. And that's the way you went with it. And that was the way we kind of just dealt with it and went through all of it that way. And I don't know why people think helmets are good. They're not. They're really, really very dangerous.
So do you contend that there were fewer concussions back then? Because I know Jack Parker said this before, the BU hockey coach, that
He's one of my believers. I talked to Jackie a long time ago about
that people aren't going to be as rough when you're left unprotected. You believe that, or do you think they were just not diagnosed as
give him credit
such?
there. I don't think it's be as rough, because we were certainly dirty and tough and fought and did all that. And some guys could pure hit. But we didn't headhunt. We didn't leverage hit. We didn't hit you up high in the neck and send you straight back into the boards or crush you into the boards with your head down. We didn't do that. Well, why not? Because I'm just as susceptible as you are. So, and we used to play each other a lot. And you know, when you play somebody 8 times, 14, the old 16 league used to play 16 times. And if a guy got you in game 1, you could get him back in the next 16, 17 games. So there was a get even thing. All right, we'll get your number, we'll wait. All right, nobody gets crazy. And everybody got even. So, but we got even with aggressive behavior, tough, but we weren't dirty. We didn't try to hurt anybody. And kids hit too high now. And elbow pads, and the equipment is so hard. And you get an elbow in the head. And I remember Kyle McLaren took a Montreal player out of the game. And a guy, I don't know if it was Surrey or Sauvé, but a great move on him. And he beat him inside. And Kyle committed outside. And once you commit your feet, you've had it. You're gone. So he stuck his arm up. And the kid ran into his elbow. And the elbow pad's like this table. And we had a little cap on the elbow, and it was all sponge over the top, doing her job. And we had a little cap on the shoulder. They got these Darth Vader pads and pants and equipment. And, oh my God, you ever seen a 5-year-old go on the ice? And once they're all dressed, they got the cages and they're looking at each other and they hit each other over the head with a stick. First thing a 5-year-old does, and that sends a mental message that you're protected, you're invincible, you're not. It is a very dangerous game, and it should be played without helmets. And it should be played with respect for your opponent, because that opponent can also get you back. So there's a lot to it. And I think courage is a big part of playing the game. And when you feel invincible, as anyone does at 21, 22, you tend to think you can get away with things. And some guys are really good hitters. I think Cam Neely's the best hitter I ever saw. Maybe Leo Boyven and Fernie Flaman in the days of old, but Neely could hit. And he always wore a helmet, but he never hit high. He never hit you dirty. He hit you hard, but he never hit you dirty. So, that respect, when I talk to Randy Carlisle, him and Craig McTavish were the last two guys that play without a helmet. And I used to do the broadcast. And I used to watch when they went in the corner, the guys with the helmets and the visors got their stick down and respected them. And they dug the puck out and went on about their business. And they knew it, and they went in, and then they took the player out the same way, down low, took the body, and didn't no cheap shots. So I said, well, why can't you fight that all the time? Guys played with them, and Red Berenson always had a helmet, Stan Mikita, great players. But nobody ran them, because those two players didn't run you. But that doesn't happen anymore.
You were certainly no stranger in the penalty box in
No.
your career. Do you still think fighting belongs in hockey today?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Why?
It's a great equalizer. It's a way to let out the steam. When a referee consistently misses calls, and it's a difficult thing to be a referee. I asked Bruce, a tangent from him, when I asked Bruce Hood, I said, then why you guys, you don't make these mistakes? He says, Derek, he says, we just get good enough to do it, and we're too old to do it. Because they play for the whole hour, and it's stop time. So, you know, you look at what things like that happen.
I believe fighting belongs in hockey because it is a huge part of the game. It shows the players' passion and emotional involvement and how intense they are about the game. I don't think hockey would be what it is today without the fighting.
Absolutely, it's part of the game. I think when you sign up as a professional sports player, you take that on as an inherent risk. But I think it's part of the excitement and fun, and that's what makes hockey hockey.
Fighting belongs in the National Hockey League. Well, I think it's always been a case that they police themselves, and so you protect your skilled players that may not be fighters, so you have some fighters come in and whatnot.
Massachusetts School of Law. Legal education that is practical, accessible, affordable, and enjoyable. Offering flexible day and evening classes, full or part-time studies, where candidates are assessed not on the LSAT, but their academic and other accomplishments, providing more professional skills training than any other law school in New England. Massachusetts School of Law. Visit us at mslaw.edu, training students to become successful lawyers and advocates, not just legal scholars.
They should keep fighting. Fighting makes the game more interesting. Other than that, most people wouldn't watch a game, I don't think.
I never thought fighting should be in hockey in the first place. When I was watching hockey back in Buffalo from the Buffalo Sabres, and they used to play the Pittsburgh Penguins, and there was always, the Penguins had this team that was known for really dirty fighting, and it detracted from the game. I never enjoyed watching fighting, and I don't think fighting belongs in hockey.
Fighting is, it's part of hockey. I don't know if you could have a hockey without fights. I don't think anybody would love hockey unless you had fights, at least nobody I know.
I think the game is basically, from the early days, is you have sticks in your hand. There's really no way to avoid that. If someone's going to be dirty with a stick, you kind of need an enforcement for that. That goes above and beyond. A 5-minute fighting penalty is something that is it's kind of needed in the game to balance things out.
I do think fighting belongs in hockey to some degree. I believe that sometimes self-policing is a decent way to control the flow of the game. And I think there's probably, as violent a sport as hockey is, there's probably less violence in hockey than sports like football. Even baseball at times, when pitchers actually throw at people. So to some degree, I think fighting belongs in hockey.
Fighting should definitely be in hockey. It's what brings out the fans, gets us excited, and keeps us watching the game.
Do you still think fighting belongs in hockey
Yes.
today?
I think fighting still belongs, and because if the ability to referees can't make every call, the hooking, the grabbing, the clutching, the holding onto your stick. That's very frustrating. The impeding the progress of a player. You're not allowed to do that, you know. You can't stop a player. You can't stick your stick between his legs and take him out. It's interference. They've never called that since the 1973 Philadelphia Flyers. Freddie Shero brought in, finishing your check, they called it. So interference all over the building. And that started the game, and it changed the game. But in those days, when things went, you got frustrated, you didn't pick up the stick and hit him over the head, you dropped your glove. And everybody dropped them with anybody when they got frustrated enough. Esposito, I saw him fight one night, couldn't believe it. I fought Red Berenson, we're all kind of laughing on the bench. Phil, what are you doing? I don't know. But they weren't fighters, but they were both mad enough to get, upset at the time.
Well, Derek, I'd like to thank you for joining us.
Okay.
And your book was a delight to read.
Thank
and
you.
If anybody likes hockey or the Bruins, pick up this book because it's
few
full of
laughs.
stories.
I'm typically against replay in most sports. I think the way that football does it is absolutely horrible. It takes a game that should be played in a crisp style and drags it out for an extra half an hour, 40 minutes a game. The way that hockey does it is they have review from a central location in Toronto. The people on the ice are not doing the replay. And the whole thing takes probably about 15 to 30 seconds in most circumstances. So if we're going to have replay, I like the way that hockey does it. I know that baseball is talking about doing replay, and if they do, and I'm not sure I think they should, but if they do, I think they should do it the way that hockey does
I
it.
think replay is something that all sports should start to implement with certain caution. I think that they already do use a little bit of replay for goals. I think in baseball it's important for home runs. It really depends on how it's going to be employed. I think that replay, again, you don't want to have technology ruin something that essentially is based on man-made ruling. But at the same time, if the outcome is determinative on the error, those errors should definitely be aided by the assistance of replay. But they have to be definitive game-changing type plays, no matter what sport.
The hockey replay, I think, is good for purposes to make sure that people aren't offsides, that the goals are legit, but at the same time it does extend the game where an hour game can actually turn into a 3-hour game. So once again, another line has to be drawn where they have to cut some corners somewhere to say, all right, we can just let that one slide rather than wasting time, showing the instant replay.
Instant replay is a great feature because it's a way to keep the game fair, to know whether a goal was actually scored or not, but I don't think it should be overly used for too many calls because then it starts to ruin the game.
I would like instant replay on the close goal line scores. Scramble in front of the net. At least in the playoffs to see, exactly what had happened there. Yeah.
Yes, I do believe there should be replay in hockey. I think there are a lot of close calls, especially with scoring and seeing it if it's over the line or not. I think that would be a huge help.
In the regular play on the ice, I'd prefer that the referees call the game and the players police themselves, and I think that's all part of sport.
I think the replay is necessary. It's a way to sort of enforce true goals, and why give it something that isn't really a true awarded goal,
Yes, they should have replay in hockey because your eye's not as fast as the puck. So they make a lot of mistakes. And in this day and age, they keep making mistakes even if they have replay. So yes, they should have replay.
Yes, I think replays are important because sometimes calls are too close to be made by a visual, and therefore with a replay you can analyze frame by frame to get an accurate call.